Hello, and welcome to Out of the Darkness. I'm Morgan Cohn, the Area Director for Orange County and the Inland Empire Desert Cities chapters of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. First and foremost, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Though like last year, we're still in a time of uncertainty, it's also a time that proves the importance of connectivity. Right now, it's more important than ever that we pay attention to and take care of both our mental and physical well-being. I hope you're all taking care of yourself, checking in with friends and family, and taking time to stay active. If you or someone you know is struggling, make sure to remember these phone numbers. First and foremost, we have 1-800-273-TALK, which is a 24/7 crisis line. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255, or you can text the word TALK to 741-741. By joining in today, you're sending a message that our cause of suicide prevention will never be canceled, because it can't be. We cannot let another day go by without showing that mental health is as real and as important as physical health. By showing up, you show others that suicide, which is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, can no longer be ignored. Suicide is a health issue that affects us all. You are part of a national movement. The Out of the Darkness events help fund innovative and exciting research that will enable us to find better ways to stop suicide, advocate for important mental health legislation. For example, 988 legislation just passed last year, and that's going to enable a 3-digit crisis line in all states, education programs, and programs for survivors of suicide loss. The funds you have raised make it possible for the Southern California chapters of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to bring our programs to our communities. By doing so, we're creating a culture that's smarter about mental health. You're letting others know that they're not alone in their struggle and/or their loss, and you're making a difference. Thank you again for joining in today and supporting the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the Out of the Darkness event. Our mission to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide would not be possible without you. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Christine Moutier. Thank you.
Hi, it's Dr. Christine Moutier, Chief Medical Officer at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for participating in our Out of the Darkness walks. You are making such a difference. By doing so, you are raising awareness. You're being part of the movement that includes all of us, experts, people with lived experience, people with loss, and many of us are all of the above. And so I just can't thank you enough. And I want to let you know that your efforts are the reason that we are the leading private funder of all suicide prevention related research. And right now we have a priority on technology and innovation in our research grants, as well as diversity. We also have our continued priority on supporting research that relates to the loss and healing experience of suicide loss survivors. Because of your involvement, we are able to develop new programs, prevention programs, as well as loss and healing programs. And in the workplace arena in the world, suddenly there is such an interest in suicide prevention. And so we are able to bring our interactive screening program to more workplaces, health systems, and colleges and universities. So thank you again so very much. Your advocacy, your involvement is it keeps us all going. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that important message, Dr. Moutier. Coming up next, we're going to hear from 2 individuals about their experiences with suicide. We would like to add a content warning, as loss and suicidal ideation will be discussed. First, we're going to hear from Pastor Rick Warren, and then from singer-songwriter X-Ari.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Rick Warren. I'm the speaker on the Daily Hope International broadcast, and I'm the author of The Purpose-Driven Life, which in Guinness Book of Records is named the most translated book in history after the Bible, and it has sold over 50 million copies in English alone. But in spite of that success, the worst day of my life was when my youngest child, who had struggled his entire life with mental illness, took his life. Suicide is devastating to everyone involved. And Matthew's death, which happened 8 years ago, is still fresh in my memory. Our family is still reeling from the effects of that trauma. And yet I've learned a lot about grief in those years. And I'd like to share some of the learnings I've had. First, I've learned that grief is individual. Everybody grieves differently. Now, that often causes conflict in families in addition to the grief. You should never expect other people to grieve like you do. Just be kind to everybody. Grief is individual. Second, there's no expiration date on grief. There's no time limit to it. There's no time when people say it's time to be over. Grief takes time, and it's foolish to rush it. Third, you don't get over grief. You get through it. And if you lose a loved one through suicide, it's not something you're going to forget. It's like if my right arm were cut off, for the rest of my life, I'm going to notice that arm isn't there anymore. I'm never going to forget it. Another thing I've learned is that grief is a good thing. Grief is actually a gift. We don't feel like it is, but it is. It's how we get through the losses and transitions of life. There is no growth without loss. There is no loss without pain. There is no pain without grief. Grief is how we get through the losses and transitions of life. In fact, having counseled thousands of people, I have learned that people who don't grieve, but instead stuff their feelings, they tend to get stuck at that point in their lives. They're unable to get on with their life because they never went through the grief process. And if you don't grieve good, you'll get stuck and you'll carry your pain into the future. Another thing I've learned is that feelings are meant to be felt. The only reason you have emotions is because God gave them to you. You were made in God's image, and God is an emotional God. We learn from scriptures that God grieves, God gets sad, God gets frustrated and angry, God gets disappointed in the way people act, just as God laughs and weeps. So it is completely natural for you to have an expression of all kinds of feelings in your grief. Feelings are simply feelings. And if you don't feel them, but instead you suppress them, it's going to be worse off. Now, if you suppress your feelings, it's like taking a Coke can and shaking it all up and putting it in the refrigerator. One day it's going to explode and it's going to come out sideways. So don't suppress your grief. Don't repress your grief. Instead, express your grief and confess your grief to God. I hope some of these things will be helpful to you in the days ahead. One other thing I'll say is that I've learned that grief comes in waves. And one moment you think you can handle it, the next minute you can't, and the next minute you can, and the next minute you can't. And your waves will never match other people's waves. And so you need to learn to listen to each other. And when someone is going through a wave of grief, don't try to cheer them up. Instead, try to share their pain. The last thing you need to do is to cheer up people when they're going through grief. It's like you're not listening to them. Instead, walk up and just put your arm around them, pat them on the back, give them a physical, hold their hand, something. It is the ministry of presence. The deeper the pain, the fewer words you use. God bless you.
Hi, my name is Aksari. My pronouns are she and they. I'm a queer artist, singer, songwriter, and mental health advocate, and I'm so proud to be with you today to share my story with you. My mental health challenges started at a young age, I'd say around 8 years old, with anxiety and OCD tendencies. I later developed anorexia, and in high school I had my first episode of depression. In university I had to file for disability because of my first experience with bipolar 1, which led to episodes of depression, mania, sleep disturbances, and also psychosis. Throughout the years, I've had to be hospitalized a couple times due to bipolar 1, but I've really found my way to coping through channeling pain into power. This means making my weaknesses my greatest strengths, thereby transmuting my burdens into blessings. It could be done in so many ways. The way I do it is through self-care and creativity, specifically writing music. Everybody can find a healthy conduit for healing. I'm not an anomaly, and if I could survive and thrive, so can you. I only started sharing my story in 2017 after recovering from a hospitalization because I finally had the courage to stand in my power and share. I was so ashamed. I was so scared of being judged, so scared of my own stigma. but really sharing has been so healing for me. And what I needed to see when I was going through my darkest times is someone like me talking openly, being vulnerable, and letting me know that it's okay not to be okay, and that what feels like the end actually might be a totally new beginning. So please, gather the strength, share, help others heal. Know you're not alone. We can do this together. Sending lots of love and light to you.
Hi everyone, I am Christopher Ramirez, Area Director for the San Diego chapter. Thank you again to all those who shared photos today. We welcome anyone who would still like to share photos on our SoCal webpage at afsp.org/SoCal, and photos will be added to the Bead and Remembrance videos after the Outer Darkness post-event. Next, we'd like to take a community act of remembrance. Wherever you are, let's just take a moment of silence for those we have lost and those who are struggling. Thank you so much for holding that space for you and others. I'd like to remind you all about a few of the resources we have available at AFSP. First and foremost, Healing Conversations. You can visit Healing Conversations at afsp.org/healingconversations. Next, we have sent out a link to our resource fair, MapMe. We ask that you please check those resources out and reach out if you have any questions. Last but not least, International Survivor of Suicide Loss Day will be taking place on Saturday, November 20th. We are planning many events throughout Southern California, and we hope to see you there. To register, please visit afsp.org/survivorday.
Hello, my name is Louisa Roque, and I'm the Area Director for Greater Los Angeles and Central Coast, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for tuning in with us today. I know that we're all hopeful for the day when the stigma around mental health and suicide are brought out of the darkness. As our community continues to walk that path, we want you to remember that you are not alone. Before we go our ways, though, and until next year, please check in with the people around you, especially if you notice that something might be wrong or that their behavior has changed. Avoid rushing to judgment and instead ask to have an open conversation with them. Lead with open-ended questions and let them know that you're available to talk and to listen and to help. Ask them directly if they're thinking about suicide. I know that this can be especially difficult to do, but being direct provides an opportunity for them to open up and to talk and to feel. And again, until next year, please be safe, open, and keep going.